we had a resident caretaker. Do you remember when they had resident caretakers in houses? And our resident caretaker was quite a funny chap. And one day the school staff, because the school staff had quite a few teams after school, like their football team and that, they'd had a football match. And the football, towards the end, had been kicked onto the top of the swimming pool. And one of the members of staff, they all went home, and one of the members of staff thought, oh, I'll get the ball off the roof. Got on the roof, couldn't get off the roof, and trying to get off the roof, some people in nearby houses saw someone on the roof. So they phoned the police, and they went to the police. The police came and said, what are you doing there? And he said, I'm a member of staff, I'm just going to get this. And the caretaker obviously came out because he was by the house, and they said, this man on the roof, he says he's a member of staff. Can you confirm that? And Mr. Walker, the caretaker, looked at him and said, I've never seen him before in my life. I don't know where he is. I've never seen him. And he allowed them to take him to this member of staff, whose name I won't mention, to the gate before he said, actually, I do know who he was.
Going into my first lesson, and it was creative writing, and I was told about this one student, Ryan Forrester. Remember his name vividly. And they went, you'll have a nightmare with him. He'll refuse to take off his cap. He'll refuse to do anything that you ask. And it was very much this kind of negative impression. And I remember this first student walked in. Multiple students were wearing caps at that point, so it was hard to distinguish who he may have been. There certainly potentially wasn't the immediate rigour walking around the building, the old school building of floors and corridors. I went, good morning, sweetheart. I said, come on in, take a seat. I said, just take your cap off. Got everyone in, sat down, did the register, did the lesson. It was as calming and chaotic as it could have been, given my first time in front of a room with all of these 16-year-olds looking at you when I'm not much older than them. But they received me very well. Did the register, kind of walked down, and you're trying to look at the names and look at the faces to know who matches because you don't know them. And I'm thinking, well, this is relatively easy, and I know that student has said they're here, and I think they've obviously told me a fib because everyone seems to be here, and he was there, and he was sat, he was the first student in, and he was compliant and pleasant and smiling. And I think for me, instantly I learnt that I'm never going to bring in judgments from other people's experiences.
The trips. We used to always take all the kids out on a trip at least once a year, always. Because of the catchment area we had, for quite a lot of kids, they'd never been to Seaside. They didn't know what Seaside was or anything like that. But when you think about how the trips were, you'd never do it now. You would never get away with it now. I mean, we used to take the kids on the train, for example, to Rhyl. We used to just walk to the station, get on the train, went to the station, went on the train, let them work in Rhyl and things like that. Or Blackpool, we went to Blackpool on coaches. We used to drop them off at the top pier, and then say, we'll see you in 2.5 hours at the middle pier, and then, well, we'll see you at such and such a time on the pier by the amusement arcade. And we never saw them in between unless we happened to come across them. And just these 3 little registers.
And everything was
fine. Everything was fine, but we took them loads of places on trips. They always went, not only to Seaside, but to amusement parks and everywhere. We had some really good trips. The staff were really good, and the kids loved it.
It was a traditional corridor, unlike the building that we have here, which is very open. And we used to have these competitions on World Book Day. So we had Wonkaland versus Wonderland. We had Gothic gangplanks. And I remember I dressed up as Frankenstein's monster. So I had this kind of full grey cheesecloth tunic and this full latex head. And I even went out on duty at the end of the day. We collected money. And I just grunted for kind of most of the morning to start with. And students were like, who's that? Well, it can only be Mrs. Hughes, who's the only one daft enough to do that, and kind of parents are getting involved, to the Diwali disco, such a rich kind of culture as Parkfield and what is SWB now that we've managed to maintain, to bringing in my toaster from home to make the kids breakfast in their old staff room.
I don't think we had to do the risk assessments to the same level at all. Nobody ever did a risk assessment about how you got on the coach or how you got off the coach or what you did in between time, or, I mean, I had went on and ran loads of trips, and we just had a list of names with phone numbers, house phone numbers obviously, or occasional mobile phone numbers, and off we set, basically. That was it. And you just assumed, you made massive assumptions that they were going to be okay.
My very last class, kind of English class at SWB on the Parkfield Road, and my very first class in kind of W14 at SWB here will always very, very strongly stay in my memory. And what's really I'm really thankful for me, some of my students now are 34-year-olds, you know, and live in another side of the world.
They had a massive Christmas party for pensioners, old age pensioners and things at Christmas, and it was really big party. And you can tell that the times have changed, because one of the biggest excitements for the visitors when they came was halfway through when the sherry came out. And everybody had and you could see them go around. And some of them they used to say, if you were going around with the sherry, they'd say, "Is yours the Harvey's? Is yours the Harvey?" Or the cheap one from down the road. And there were loads of, you know, it was really good. It was a big thing. And the students did such a lot of work with it. They were the ones serving, they were the ones preparing. We had all that, and that was quite a long time before it became the vogue.
You know, so I'm now seeing students that have now got married and had their own children. And what's really scary for me is last open day in October, I had 17 students who were here whose children are now starting in September.
We had some massive summer fairs on the field with different stalls, loads of different stalls and games, and loads of kids involved. We had those for years. You can tell our summer fair, you could hear it coming down the school because we had the brass band. The brass band used to start picking up people on the way, as it were, and by the time they got to school, we had a load of people following the band into the school for the summer fair. We had hog roasts and everything. It was really a very big summer fair. We also had like productions, a lot of productions. The drama department, especially under a chap called Martin Morgan, who later went on, in fact, to become the head at Smestow School. And he'd put on really, really good shows involving loads of kids, and they were quality performances. And we had a lot of people do that. But we also had a different sort of performance in that we had the staff group and the staff band, and they performed and they were funny. They were talented, but they were funny, you know. And we had some really good staff events like that, staff quizzes, everything. There were lots of things that involved the school. You don't seem to get that staff event so much now.